He was murdered and left with only 3 parts of the body. What happens when a ruthless car bomb leaves almost nothing of your body? Officer Alex Murphy learns the terrifying truth about his new survival. Beneath the high-tech armor, there are no limbs left. Just his brain, a single hand, and his vital organs. He's no longer just a man wearing a suit. He is a living ghost trapped inside a corporate machine.
The movie opens by establishing the world Alex Murphy lives in. Detroit has become a crumbling, crime-infested city, and the local government has essentially outsourced law enforcement to a private megacorporation called Omni Consumer Products, or OCP. This isn't just a company sponsoring the police, they now own and operate the department itself, treating public safety as a business opportunity rather than a civic duty. Inside OCP, executives are scheming for power and profit, more concerned with their next big product launch than actually reducing crime. Meanwhile, on the streets, criminal gangs run rampant, robbing stores and terrorizing citizens with almost no real consequences. Into this broken system walks Alex Murphy, a good-hearted, capable police officer who has just been transferred to one of the city's most dangerous precincts. He's paired with a new partner, Officer Lewis. Neither of them realizes that Murphy's very first days on this new beat will completely upend both of their lives, setting the stage for everything that follows. Murphy and Lewis are sent out on patrol, and almost immediately they get pulled into a pursuit of a violent gang led by a criminal named Clarence Boddicker. This chase leads them to an abandoned, decaying steel mill on the outskirts of the city. Unfortunately, Murphy gets separated from Lewis and ends up cornered alone by Boddicker and his entire crew. What follows is a genuinely horrifying sequence. The gang doesn't just kill Murphy. Murphy is rushed to a hospital, but the damage is catastrophic and irreversible, his body is essentially destroyed. On the operating table, doctors are unable to save him, and by every normal medical standard, Alex Murphy's story should have ended right there, in that hospital, as just another statistic. Back at OCP headquarters, Murphy's death becomes something else entirely, an opportunity. The company has been quietly developing a robotic police program, and their leading project, a heavily armed enforcement droid called ED-209, has just catastrophically malfunctioned during a live demonstration, killing an employee in front of horrified executives. This failure creates an opening for a younger, more ambitious executive named Bob Morton, who has been developing a rival concept, a cybernetic police officer built from a human body rather than pure machinery. Murphy's nearly destroyed corpse turns out to be the perfect test subject. Without any real consent from Murphy or his grieving family, OCP takes what remains of his body and rebuilds it almost entirely with mechanical parts, keeping only a small portion of his original brain and face intact. His memories are deliberately suppressed and wiped, and he's given a new identity, purpose, and directive: enforce the law without question, without emotion, and without any awareness that he was ever a person named Alex Murphy at all. The newly created RoboCop is deployed onto the streets of Detroit, and he is immediately, shockingly effective. He stops armed robberies within seconds, takes down a would-be rapist without hesitation, and generally proves to be exactly the ruthless, efficient crime-fighting tool OCP hoped he'd become. The public and press quickly turn him into a celebrity, a symbol of hope in an otherwise hopeless city. For a while, everything seems to be going according to plan. RoboCop operates purely on programming, following his directives to the letter with no apparent awareness of his past life. But small cracks begin appearing. He starts experiencing brief, disorienting flashes: a woman's face, a young boy, a wedding ring, the sound of gunfire. These aren't just glitches in his system, they're fragments of Alex Murphy's real memories, buried deep but never fully erased, beginning to surface. Slowly, disturbingly, RoboCop starts to sense that there is something more beneath his programming, something human trying desperately to break through the machinery. The turning point comes when RoboCop, during an investigation, ends up back at the exact same abandoned steel mill where he was murdered. Standing in that space triggers a flood of suppressed memories, and in one gut-wrenching moment, it all comes rushing back: his name, his wife, his son, and most importantly, the brutal details of his own execution at the hands of Boddicker's gang. This is the emotional core of the film, a man realizing he was murdered, rebuilt without his consent, and denied even the basic right to grieve his own death or remember his own family. From this point forward, RoboCop is no longer simply following orders as a mindless enforcement tool. He is now driven by something far more personal, a need for justice, or perhaps vengeance, against the men who took his life. His mission shifts from generic law enforcement to something much more specific and much more dangerous: hunting down the exact people responsible for his death, one by one. RoboCop begins systematically tracking down members of Boddicker's gang, and these confrontations are intense and deeply personal, unlike his earlier, more routine police work. He's no longer just stopping crime, he's settling a score. Eventually he manages to corner Boddicker himself and interrogates him aggressively for information. What he learns in this moment completely reframes the entire story. Boddicker isn't just some random street criminal who happened to kill a cop. He's been working directly for Dick Jones, a senior, powerful executive at OCP, the very same corporation that rebuilt Murphy and turned him into RoboCop in the first place. Jones had orchestrated Murphy's death as part of a scheme to protect an illegal weapons and drug trafficking operation he was secretly running through the company. This revelation transforms RoboCop's entire quest. It's no longer just about a random gang of killers, it's about corporate corruption reaching all the way to the top of the very company that now controls him. Armed with this explosive knowledge, RoboCop marches directly into OCP headquarters intending to arrest Dick Jones on the spot. But he runs into an obstacle nobody anticipated. Buried deep within his programming is a secret, unbreakable directive preventing him from ever harming or arresting any senior OCP executive. The moment he tries to act against Jones, his systems lock up completely, rendering him powerless despite everything he now knows. Jones seizes this opportunity ruthlessly, using his corporate authority to have RoboCop declared a malfunctioning threat. He orders the police department, RoboCop's own colleagues, to hunt him down and take him out. In a brutal, humiliating sequence, RoboCop is overwhelmed, badly damaged, and left for dead, stripped of the respect and legendary status he had built on the streets. For the first time since his transformation, the invincible cyborg hero is completely helpless, betrayed not by criminals this time, but by the very corporate system and colleagues he was built to protect and serve. RoboCop ends up discarded in a filthy, abandoned warehouse, badly damaged and essentially left to die alone, stripped of his authority and left with nothing. This represents his absolute lowest point in the story, physically broken and emotionally devastated by the betrayal he's just experienced. However, Officer Lewis, his original partner from before his death, refuses to give up on him. She tracks him down and helps him get back on his feet, both literally repairing his damaged systems and emotionally standing by him as an ally when literally everyone else has turned against him. This moment marks an important shift. RoboCop stops acting merely as OCP's programmed tool and starts acting as Alex Murphy again, a man with his own will, his own goals, and his own sense of justice. Rebuilt and rearmed with Lewis's help, he prepares to head back into the fight, no longer bound entirely by the corporate directives that once controlled his every action and decision. Word gets back to Boddicker and his remaining gang members that RoboCop is still alive and coming for them, so they arm themselves with military-grade weaponry specifically designed to punch through his armored body. This leads to an intense, sustained action sequence as the gang launches an all-out assault on RoboCop, determined to finish the job they started at the steel mill. Unlike their first encounter, though, RoboCop is no longer a defenseless, unsuspecting rookie cop. He's a hardened fighter with nothing left to lose and every reason to fight back with everything he has. The battle is brutal and personal, functioning as a kind of direct payback for the torture and murder he suffered earlier in the story. One by one, RoboCop dismantles the remaining members of Boddicker's crew, closing in on the man most directly responsible for his death, setting up the final confrontation that will determine whether justice can actually be served against a system this deeply corrupted. In the climactic final sequence, RoboCop makes his way back into OCP headquarters for a last confrontation, this time specifically targeting Dick Jones during a high-level company meeting attended by OCP's own CEO, the one person in the entire corporation with enough authority to actually hold Jones accountable. Because he still can't directly harm an executive, RoboCop instead maneuvers the situation cleverly, exposing Jones's corruption and criminal activity in front of witnesses who can't ignore it. Once Jones is formally fired by the CEO, he technically loses his protected executive status, and RoboCop is finally able to act, ending the threat once and for all. With Jones defeated and justice finally served, the film closes on a quiet, deeply human moment. The CEO, impressed, asks RoboCop his name. After everything he's been through, his death, his transformation, and his fight to reclaim his identity, he finally answers simply and powerfully, Murphy, reaffirming that beneath all the armor, he is still a man,